three bodybuilders believed in the American dream so hard that they planned the most absurd, brainless kidnapping in Miami history, only to realize that real crime takes a lot more than just big muscles. On June 17, 1995, the story opens in Miami as bodybuilder Danny Lugo gets in a workout right outside a gym. Suddenly, a fleet of police cars swarms the area with sirens blaring. Panic strikes, and Danny sprints off, frantically trying every trick in the book to outrun the cops. Just when he thinks he can escape, a police cruiser slams directly into him, bringing him down hard. The story then flashes back 6 months earlier. Danny, an ambitious, smooth-talking guy with a fresh criminal record, is released from prison after serving time for a Medicare fraud scheme. Driven by a desire for wealth, he applies for a job at the Sun Gym. He boldly promises the owner, John Misi, that he will triple the gym's membership count in just 3 short months. John takes the gamble and hires him, and Danny delivers, filling the gym with eager new members. During his time as a personal trainer, Danny bonds with fellow bodybuilder Adrian Doorbal, a gym enthusiast who takes heavy doses of steroids to speed up his muscle gains. While the gym thrives and money starts rolling in, Danny remains unsatisfied with his life. While watching TV, he comes across a late-night infomercial hosted by motivational speaker Johnny Wu, who preaches that passive don'ts must become aggressive doers to achieve wealth. Danny's jealousy reaches a boiling point when he takes on a new client, Victor Kershaw, a loud, self-made millionaire who constantly brags about his absurd fortune. Fed up with listening to Kershaw boast about his riches, Danny decides that working a regular job will never make him rich. Inspired by Johnny Wu's motivational seminar, he devises a plan to kidnap Kershaw and extort his entire net worth. Danny pitches the dangerous plan to Adrian, who eagerly jumps on board for the promise of fast money to fund his expensive lifestyle. Realizing they need more raw muscle, Danny recruits Paul Doyle, a former drug addict and ex-convict who found religion behind bars and currently lives at a church compound under the care of Pastor Andy. Struggling to land a job due to his record, Paul hangs out with Danny and Adrian at a local club. There, they meet Serena Sombrex, an exotic dancer with big dreams, whom Danny tricks into joining them by promising her a starring role in a non-existent music video. When Danny reveals the true kidnapping plan outside the club, Paul initially refuses because he wants to live a clean, Christian life. However, back at Adrian's home, heavy steroid abuse leaves Adrian suffering from temporary erectile dysfunction, making him desperate for expensive medical treatments. Meanwhile, at the church compound, Pastor Randy makes unwanted sexual advances toward Paul. Pushed to his limit, Paul brutally beats the pastor and flees. Homeless and out of options, Paul rejoins the crew on one strict condition: no one gets killed. The trio heads to a local gun store where Paul lies, claiming they're ex-military doing security for a rock group, convincing the clerk to sell them heavy tactical firepower. With heavy firepower secured, Danny presents a detailed layout of Victor Kershaw's mansion to Adrian and Paul. However, their first kidnapping attempt fails completely when they arrive only to find Kershaw throwing a massive, crowded house party, forcing them to retreat in panic. Their second attempt turns into an absolute disaster when they target the wrong car, forcing them to rethink their entire strategy. Finally, the trio sets up an ambush outside Kershaw's private airfield. They successfully strike Kershaw with a taser, throw his unconscious body into their van, and haul him to a secluded warehouse filled with adult toys. The crew blindfolds Kershaw so he cannot see their faces, while Danny tries to disguise his identity by putting on a fake accent. However, Kershaw immediately recognizes Danny simply by smelling his distinct vanilla cologne. Realizing his cover is completely blown, Danny drops the accent and bluntly tells Kershaw they are taking every single penny he owns. Kershaw stubbornly refuses to cooperate, insisting he worked hard for his wealth. To keep Kershaw's family from suspecting anything, the crew forces Kershaw to make a phone call ordering his family to leave the country under a fake alibi. To build his own alibi, Danny returns to work at the Sun Gym, leaving Paul to guard Kershaw. During his shift, Paul bonds with Kershaw over their shared struggles with addiction and performs a religious prayer over him. For 13 straight days, the crew subjects Kershaw to continuous, painful torture, but Kershaw stubbornly refuses to sign over his legal assets. Meanwhile, Serena grows suspicious about the fake music video gig, so Danny lies to her again, claiming he is an undercover CIA operative on a top-secret mission and instructing her to stay close to Paul. During one shift, a desperate Kershaw makes a sudden break for freedom, forcing a stressed Paul to knock him out cold. 3 full weeks pass with zero progress on the asset transfer. Seeking additional leverage, Adrian steals Kershaw's prized racing dog and gifts it to his new girlfriend, Nurse Robin. Worn down by weeks of relentless torture, Kershaw finally snaps and signs all his property and asset transfer documents over to Danny. However, Danny discovers that the legal paperwork requires an official notary public stamp. Danny turns to his gym boss, John Misi, who is a licensed notary. When Misi initially refuses to stamp the documents without Kershaw physically present, Danny bribes him with cash, promising to sponsor Misi's upcoming gym competition. Misi officially notarizes the documents, officially handing Kershaw's entire life savings, home, and bank accounts over to Danny. With the money secured, the dark final phase begins. Danny orders Paul to get Kershaw blackout drunk so they can stage his death in a fake DUI car crash. Paul forces alcohol down Kershaw's throat until he is completely wasted. That night, the crew drives Kershaw out to a quiet location, stuffs his drunk body into a car, and crashes it into a wall to make it look like a fatal DUI accident. However, Kershaw miraculously survives thanks to his seatbelt and deployed airbags. Furious at the mistake, the crew douses the wrecked vehicle in gasoline and sets it ablaze. To their absolute shock, Kershaw stumbles out of the burning wreckage like a real-life Terminator. Danny orders Paul to run Kershaw over with their van. Paul hits the gas and slams right into Kershaw, and then puts the van in reverse to run over his head to finish him off. Believing he is finally dead, the trio drives away. Unbelievably, Kershaw survives a third time with broken bones and is rushed to the hospital by first responders. When police detectives interview Kershaw, they completely dismiss his wild story of being kidnapped and tortured for weeks, assuming he is a confused lunatic due to his past criminal record. Learning that Kershaw survived, Danny's crew gears up and heads to the hospital to finish the hit. Meanwhile, Kershaw uses a hospital phone to call Ed Dubois, a retired private investigator listed in an old book. Ed advises Kershaw to leave the public hospital immediately. Seconds later, Danny's crew slips into the hospital disguised in medical scrubs, only to find Kershaw's bed empty. By June 1995, the three bodybuilders split Kershaw's fortune and start living high on the hog. Danny moves into Kershaw's luxury mansion, while Paul throws lavish parties with Serena, quickly spiraling back into heavy drug addiction. Adrian uses his share to pay for specialized medical treatments for his erectile dysfunction and proposes to Nurse Robin. Meanwhile, Kershaw stays hidden in a cheap motel where Ed Dubois visits him, agreeing to investigate the case. Unbeknownst to the trio, Ed operates in the shadows, gathering ironclad evidence. As Paul's drug habit and Serena's high-maintenance lifestyle completely drain his share of the money, Ed goes undercover as a wealthy client at Sun Gym. Ed gets face-to-face with Danny and casually drops Kershaw's name, sending shockwaves through Danny and confirming someone is onto them. Shortly after, Adrian marries Robin in an expensive ceremony. Desperate and flat broke, Paul attempts a solo armed robbery on an armored cash truck, which turns into a chaotic shootout where Paul gets his big toe shot off before escaping. Bleeding heavily, Paul crashes Adrian's wedding reception and begs Danny for help. Paul proposes hitting a brand new target, Frank Griga, an arrogant multimillionaire who made a fortune in adult phone hotlines. Adrian immediately jumps on board because he blew his entire fortune on his wedding and new house. Using paper trail evidence, Kershaw discovers John Misi notarized his stolen assets and calls Misi to threaten legal action. A panicked Misi confronts Danny at the gym pool. Danny and Misi track Kershaw's phone location to a motel, but Kershaw is already gone, and Danny spots Ed Dubois' ID, realizing his client is a private investigator. Ed presents ironclad evidence to the police chief, who stubbornly refuses to act. Danny and Adrian break into Ed's house to hunt for Kershaw, but flee when police cars pull up, unaware the cops were just dropping Ed home. Greenlit by Danny, the crew pitches a gym investment deal to adult hotline millionaire Frank Griga. Negotiations move to Adrian's house, where skeptical Frank backs out and calls Danny an amateur. Enraged, Danny starts a fist fight and accidentally kills Frank when a heavy weightlifting plate hits his head. Frank's girlfriend, Christina, runs in screaming and fires a gun at Danny. Adrian and Paul tackle her and inject her with a heavy dose of horse tranquilizer to knock her out. While Danny and Paul leave to drain Frank's home safe, Adrian accidentally gives Christina a second massive dose of tranquilizer, killing her instantly, returning empty-handed because Christina gave them the wrong safe code. Danny is horrified to discover two dead bodies on their hands. Danny, Paul, and Adrian load both corpses into their van and haul them to their secluded warehouse. Meanwhile, clues begin surfacing across the city. A passerby spots Kershaw's stolen dog, and Frank's housekeeper finds Paul's missing toe, which Frank's dog had been playing with, and dials 911. At the warehouse, Danny and Adrian use a sharp hatchet to chop off identifying features from both bodies to erase their identities. Danny then orders Paul to burn the dismembered remains on an outdoor grill. Overcome with disgust and remorse, Paul drops the tongs and walks away from the crew forever. Danny and Adrian finish the job alone, stuffing the remains into heavy oil drums and dumping them into the ocean. Realizing Ed was right all along, the police chief launches a synchronized SWAT raid to arrest the gang. SWAT officers arrest John Macy during a live gym competition, apprehend Paul peacefully inside a church, and take down Adrian at his home. Meanwhile, Danny flees from a police cruiser collision at his gym, escapes to the docks, and hijacks a speedboat to make a break for the Bahamas to drain the rest of Kershaw's offshore accounts. Acting on a key tip from Kershaw, Ed Dubois and Kershaw fly out to the Bahamas to intercept Danny before he can drain the remaining offshore accounts. They catch Danny red-handed inside a Bahamian bank, sparking a wild foot chase through the streets. Ed shoots Danny in the leg to slow him down, and as Danny desperately tries to drag himself away, Kershaw hits the gas and slams his car directly into Danny, pinning him down until police tackle and cuff him. Extradited back to Miami, the trio stands trial in a high-profile court case where Serena and Robin testify against them. Though Danny smugly believes the state lacks evidence, search teams recover the sunken oil drums from the ocean, officially identifying Christina's remains using the serial number on her undamaged breast implant. To make matters worse for the gang, Paul takes a plea deal, confessing to everything and pointing the finger at Danny and Adrian as the ringleaders. Thanks to his full cooperation, Paul receives a 15-year prison sentence, which he spends serving the prison church ministry. Meanwhile, after just 14 minutes of jury deliberation, Danny and Adrian are hit with a mountain of charges and sentenced to death. The film ends with real-life photos of the actual people involved, revealing that John Macy later died while serving his prison sentence.